Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soulprint. Thank you very, very much for being here. First, thank you for all of the healing, the energy healing, the Reiki, the thoughts, the prayers, all of it. It's just about 2 weeks since I fell, and I am healing really, really well. It's a little tender. I'm a little sore in the ribs, but I'm doing really, really well. Having broken a rib before, by comparison, this one's going much more quickly and much more easily. So I thank each and every one of you. All right. So this is the thing. I don't know if you've noticed, but the courts don't seem to be taking too kindly to Trump and the Trump administration and the way he's behaving and the way they're behaving and, snarky comments that are coming out of the attorney general and that blonde chick who does the press conferences things in her. And it's like, what the hell is going on? I want to take a look at the court system. I especially want to look at the Supreme Court because bottom line is everything seems to be traveling up there. But there was a ruling that came down last week that was like 7-2 for the rule of law. It had to do with, I think it had to do with the planes that went with all of those people on them. So I want to see exactly what's going on behind the scenes with SCOTUS and more broadly, what's just going on, how those judges and the court system are actually feeling and dealing with what is now going on. I mean, I'm sorry, but SCOTUS did it to themselves, right? I mean, you just don't give somebody, particularly somebody like Trump, who has, such a high propensity for revenge and for anger, and somebody who frankly doesn't know what he's doing most of the time, to give him the kind of power and leeway that they gave him. And, there was warnings that went out saying, don't do this, it's not, it's not good, but they ignored that. And they said, nah, you know what, whatever you do as president is just fine. You're not breaking any laws. And so what do you have now? You have a president who is just out of control and is doing whatever he wants. And again, it all boils down to revenge. I mean, this whole thing with Harvard, right? Although I understand he's pulling back a little bit on that. It's like, well, you're not going to do what I want. Fine. I'm just going to cut off all your, funding. It's like, that's not the behavior of a president. That's the behavior of a spoiled, entitled toddler. Take a look. I want to see how the court systems are dealing with this, what's going on behind the scenes, and what they plan on doing to fix it. But you have really stepped over the line when you have like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh siding with the more sort of liberal. And that would have been Coney Barrett and Roberts. It was Thomas and Alito that were like, yeah, no, whatever he wants is fine. So let's take a peek, shall we? Let's see what's going on with the American justice system and the court system. Every time I cut the deck, a justice card comes up, so that's interesting. See where we are. All right, so let's get cracking, shall we? U.S. Justice SCOTUS, U.S. Justice SCOTUS, U.S. Justice SCOTUS. So this is the thing that, we kind of want to remember is that the Republicans have waited a really long time to be able to do what they're doing. Okay. The whole Project 2025, that was not something that was just created quickly in 2023 and 24. It was absolutely something that had been in the works for a very, very long time. That's one of the things that the Republicans seem to honestly excel at, is they do this sort of long term, they will stick on a topic until they get it done. The abortion situation is a perfect example. It took them decades to get it reversed, but they just hyper focus and they got it reversed. So where you're at right now is you have a political party that in many ways, honestly, is getting what they want. And it's not even so much that people don't want what they want. Everybody's for, no corruption and smaller government. And it's the way they're doing it. And it's not only the cruelty and the insensitivity, and the callousness. It is the absolute disregard for law, for order, for anything that resembles what typically was considered sort of the rule of law and the way things were handled in the United States up until now. So it's important to remember that this was not some sort of thought pattern. This was something that they were like working towards for a really, really long time. Let's see what the cards have to say. We're starting off with the Five of Pentacles. So what we're talking about here is, in many ways, the court system has now become glaringly aware of the fact that they are being ignored. They are now on the outside, and their words, their rulings are not being taken with any degree of seriousness. And this is the problem. It's bad enough when you have the top part of the government, whether it's the president or the AG, not only not like adhering to the rulings, but literally scoffing at them. So, oh, wait a minute, judges, we screwed up. And now we're on the outside trying to figure out how to get back into the inside so that we can try to contain and control the choices and the decisions that were made. Interestingly, we have the Knight, the Queen, and the King of Swords all showing up. And so this is talking, right? The Knight of Swords is talking about that rush against the law. That headstrong, I'm rushing ahead, I'm doing whatever I want. You said I could, and I'm gonna. And now the King and the Queen basically represent the judiciary, right? It represents the lawyers. It represents the judges and the rulings that they're making, and frankly, how they're feeling about the fact that that you have an executive branch that is just thumbing their nose at what you're saying, and this idea of how to rein it in. And you create a monster, you live with a monster, right? And that's exactly what they did. And, this is the thing that people forever forget about him. When he says something and it's outlandish, everybody goes, he's just talking. He's not just talking, he means it. And what's dangerous, two things. One is he will move heaven and earth to accomplish what he wants. And two, he doesn't actually know what he's doing, and he doesn't care or understand about consequences. So now you have a Justice Department that honestly is scrambling and trying to figure out how they're supposed to contain this out of control knight who is just charging through. So right now they're trying to figure out how they rein in what is going on. And part of it is the recognition that simply too much power was handed to the presidency. And the fact that when they made that decision, Biden was in office, and of course, Biden plays by the rules. And so for whatever reason, I think that they thought that Trump would do the same, which is retarded. Sorry, I shouldn't use that word, but it's insane because they had 8 years of watching him and listening to him and, you know, being able to judge his behavior. So now they're in a place where they're trying to basically plug the holes. One of the things that you're seeing, though, is the coming together. It was almost like it took one or two judges to say no, and the rest of them kind of are like, okay, well, we can say no too. So there you have it. Apparently, there's something like, I just saw it this morning, something like 69 judges, I guess, within the United States that have now basically been given heightened security because of the danger that they're in, because they're not just bending the knee. So, but there is this sort of coming together. um, Harvard did a really good thing because, first of all, it made all those law firms that buckled look really bad. And it's kind of a sad thing, right? Because those were little law firms. Those were big, important, reputable law firms in the United States who have all said, yeah, no, it's okay. We'll do what you want. We're not going to charge you. It's fine. Well, no, 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 it's not. But we have these groupings of lawyers, of institutions that are pushing back and saying you're not going to get away with this. And there's a recognition that when you come together jointly, you are bigger and stronger than the individuals, including the presidency. And so now there's almost like an unspoken, if you will, understanding or an awareness that saying no is not, it's not something that you should be afraid of doing and saying. Now, there's definitely this sort of feeling of trying to figure out how to balance, not only like the rule of law, but the behavior and the emotional responses that 45 engages in, because that's where the danger is, right? This isn't somebody who, has a philosophy or an ideology, and it's like will sort of disregard things that get in the way because they have a firm ideology. Yeah, Alito and Thomas, they fall into that category. 45 doesn't. 45 is completely motivated by revenge and anger. And the courts now are having to balance not only the ruling of the Supreme Court that basically said presidents can do whatever they want, but to also make sure that the rule of law comes out on top. Because, wow, yeah, surprisingly, they figured out that, oh, wait a minute, we also are on the chopping block now, because dictators don't require, or countries with dictators do not require an overseeing court to ensure that the laws of the land are being followed. That's what Scotus is supposed to be doing. And if you have somebody who is only looking for puppets, then the power of the Supreme Court is completely diminished. It's destroyed. It's obliterated, because you have now a court system that's basically going to do whatever he wants. And so they're trying to figure out now how they balance maintaining the rule of law and adhering still to the um the ruling that they made. It's that simple. Where does this end? This is going to end with um almost like an ending and a new start. Okay, we're looking at the death card here, and what it's talking about is that, like a lot of things when it comes to 45, things spiral so far out of control that eventually they slam into a wall, they stop, and then they start reversing course. So that's what this is talking about, almost like an ending and a new beginning. But remember, he is nothing but a tool for Project 45. And he's doing what they want. He's just doing it too loudly and too obviously and too quick. So and you've got a whole bunch of justices on the Supreme Court who pretty much agree with what Project 25 wants because they are Republican based. But they're now they're you're getting to a place where it has to be reined in, okay? There's a lot of sort of quiet contemplation going on. This is the thing all through the court system is they're trying to deal with the decisions that are being made and the rulings that are just being blatantly ignored. There's a lot of sort of almost quiet reflection going on among judges saying, okay, how do we deal with this? How do we kind of maneuver around it? How do we ensure that our rulings are fair, but yet adhered to? And how do we make sure that our rulings hold all the way up to the Supreme Court? And so there's a lot of almost like quiet reflection going on. Listen up. You're always going to have Knight of Pentacles. You're always going to have those people who are in it for the power, for the prestige, for the perks, for the money. And they're not above it. All right. Whether you are just a judge in a regular court, federal or state, whether you are in an appellate court or whether you are the Supreme Court. These people want that power. Make no mistake. And part of the reason that they're reacting now is because that power is being threatened, right? They're basically being disregarded. But don't fool yourself into thinking that all of a sudden they're being, altruistic and they're making decisions based on the good of the country. They're not. They're making decisions based on their interpretation of the rule of law, their interpretation of the Constitution, which frankly dates back a couple of 100 years. And they're not taking into consideration sort of the evolution of the country, of society, of what was considered normal or acceptable then versus now. I mean, I don't want to start a big fight here, but what is it? Your Second Amendment, the one about the right to own guns? Yeah, sure. 200 years ago, you had the right to protect yourself and your property with a musket. All right. That is not the same thing as an AK-45 or whatever they are that just take out swaths of people. But when you base your philosophy on the exact meaning and don't look at the evolution, that's what you end up with. So they're not doing this for the good of the country. They're doing this for their own reasons. Don't lose sight of that. Eight of Cups. "45 and his administration are going to continue to lose, basically. They're going to continue to have these disappointments because they are so brazen about what they're doing that even if quietly there are some justices who are like, well, I kind of agree with what they're doing. And because of the way they're doing it, there has to be this sort of legal pushback. So the unfavorable rulings will continue because it's one of the few ways they have of trying to hold basically his feet to the fire, right? Is just this by saying no, 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 no. When it comes right down to it, remember the Supreme Court is made up primarily of people who they come from the heritage group. They come from that philosophy of Project 2025. So they agree with a lot of what's going on. They're just trying to figure out when he steps over the line, how do you react or respond to that? And right now, what you're seeing is a lot of rulings that are not going the way that administration would like them to go. The rot comes from, the head down, right? And so, as I said, you have a entitled toddler in the most powerful position of your country, and he doesn't care. It really is just as simple, honestly, just as simple as that. All right. Next two cards, you have the World and you have Judgment. All right. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at judgments that will continue to try to rein in this literally out of control train. But a lot of those judgments, it's almost like there's going to be some wiggle room, right? Because they don't disagree with what's going on. They disagree with the way it's being done. Keep that distinction clear in your head, all right? They approve. They just don't like the way it's being done. Because one, it's drawing too much attention to, that real right leaning philosophy ideology. But the judgment are going to continue to try to bring this sort of out of control train, if you will, into some sort of adherence, right? Into some sort of balance. Ultimately, you have the Six of Wands. So the courts will win eventually, but it's going to be a process. And every ruling that is against the administration, their behaviors, make no mistake, it's going all the way up to the Supreme Court. But there is an awareness that in order for the rule of law to survive, they need to bring to an end. Sorry, if you can hear Atlas, he's barking at something. They need to make sure that their judgments are basically just, and that they are still able to move forward with one, their agenda, and two, their power. So that's what you have right now. That's what you're dealing with. The good news is that 45 in the administration are going to be reined in. The flip side of that coin is they're going to be reined in to the degree that they need to be reined in so that they sort of still get what they want, but it's not so incredibly against the rule of law. Ultimately, you've got, the greedy king. This has always been my card for him. And he will continue to do what he's doing. But again, there's two different sort of parallel roads, if you will. One is the very conservative right-wing ideology, desires, intentions. The other is 45 and his revenge tour and his determination to just eliminate whatever does not adhere. And so what you're getting is you're getting somebody whispering in his ear saying, those universities, they're just a little bit too liberal. Well, that gets him all worked up and he starts spouting off about, how dare universities have, free speech and no, you're going to teach things the way we want it taught. And you're not going to open your doors to all kinds of people. We want, us white people to have the advantage. So they're playing into his own biases and prejudices, and they're doing it in a way that they can get him all fired up. And so that's why it's so effective right now, right? It's because you have someone whispering in his ear who actually has an agenda that has nothing to do with his agenda. It has to do with the principles and the ideology of the right. And then you have him on these apparent rampages. But it's not as scattershot as sometimes it feels like it is. And like all bullies, when there is enough pushback, he backs away. It happened with tariffs. He didn't erase it all, but he certainly retreated. And that's going to continue to happen because what you're getting now around, not only around within the country, but around the world, are people who are saying, no, you're a bully and we're not going to play with you. And when that happens, his own narcissistic processes start to get shaky, and then he does whatever he needs to do to kind of make all of the nastiness, the dissension, the people who don't like him all of a sudden, make that go away. So he tries to appease. That's where you're at right now. Listen, the good news is that ultimately the courts are going to win, but continue to recognize and realize that this trying to find this balance is going to continue. So there are going to be some rulings that come out of the Supreme Court where people are going, like, thank God, but they made the right decision. And there's going to be some rulings that come out of the Supreme Court where honestly, 35% of the population are going to think are brilliant and everybody else is horrified. As 45's approval numbers drop, you're going to see more instances of retreat. So that's something you need to hang on to. But it's a process. I mean, it just is. It's a process that is moving through. And somewhere down the road, there's going to need to be a rebalancing of the Supreme Court so that the rulings that come out of it are actual rulings that are adhering to the rule of law, but take into consideration basically the evolution of the people and of the country. Okay. Hopefully, that is somewhat comforting. Hopefully, it gives you some insight or direction. And again, you pay attention to as much as you need to so that you are informed, but you don't pay more attention than that because it makes everybody crazy and everybody's blood pressure spikes. So find your own balance. That's really, really important. And I think that that's one of the things that as a collective, we are figuring out is how to find the balance, honestly, between the two extremes. Okay. Thank you very, very much for being here. Until next time, take care and be well. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.